Welcome back to the OTB podcast. Before we get started with our chat with Joe Nation, Smith Optics have just launched their new Rhythm mountain bike goggle. Race inspired and ready for anything you throw at it. From party laps to World Cups, they've got your vision covered. The roll-off compatible design will keep things clear on the muddy days, and their range of chrome pop lenses will make the details pop in any light. I've been using these for a few months now and have been nothing short of impressed with them. And we might even have some of these to give away real soon. Also, while you're at it, freshen up your look with some new riding kit from troyledesigns.co.nz. From the mild to the wild, Troy Designs will keep you protected and looking sharp no matter what you're riding. And don't forget, you can save 15% by using the code otbpodcast at checkout. Well, all one word, OTB podcast. All right, on to the show.
Nice. Very nice. Front and back. Leader's garment. Quite happy.
It's alright, isn't it? Looks pretty good in that bad boy.
Excellent, I think the word you're looking for is. Look at that thing. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? Beautiful.
Now, only if you're ready for this.
Welcome back to the OTB podcast. We're back with a special edition with an old friend of Red Dog and I's. We used to, do a lot of downhill racing with back in the day. Joe Nation, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, guys. Stoked to be on. Looking forward to it.
Oh, it's good to have you here. I don't want to. In these in the past, we've kind of dived back in, back into history of, people's kind of racing upbringing. But I think you did a pretty comprehensive one of those with Windmasters. But I'm pretty keen to hear about your current expeditions and some of this. I mean, to me, it's madness, the stuff you're doing. So I think we're gonna keep it fairly current, but we might have to get some national series stories off you too, I reckon.
Always. Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. And then obviously in the co-host seat as always, Red Dog. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to Joe actually because he's been up to some pretty cool stuff that maybe I'd aspire to do one day.
Oh, I've got no aspiration to do that. Fuck. Man.
Oh, I'd love to. I reckon it'd be awesome.
You're cooked. Nah, I don't know how you do it. I guess let's just get straight into it. I mean, last year you raced the E-EWS, Joe, and then so what led you down the path to go from e-bike enduro racing into this endurance racing? I don't even know what you call it. What's it classified as?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose ultra bikepack racing is sort of the niche little discipline it's under. A bit of a 180 from the stuff, as you said, that I was doing last year. The sponsor Pole, basically only made an e-bike last year, and so I was racing that, and it was all good and well, but it wasn't really. Well, just enduro was making a bit of a change for me, sort of less massive days and more like really downhill speed orientated and things like that. It was getting really close to downhill, and don't get me wrong, I'm a massive fan of downhill, but it was just getting too close. Like I might as well just watch a downhill World Cup, I was having less stoke for enduro, and then so last year in the middle of the season there was a 2-month break, and mate Rufus and I decided to do the Great British Divide. Just I don't even know how it came up. We'd only done like 1 day things in Christchurch, the Petit Brevet, which is just like try and do 10,000 meters climbing in a day on Banks Peninsula. And then, I don't know, the last time we did it, we really enjoyed it and we were looking for other events. And then it just sort of, this Great British Divide was right in a break of my racing. And yeah, it was 2,200 Ks and you go from, sort of Dover down south all the way up to Fort William. And finish there where they have the Downhill World Cuppers. And Rufus and I just decided to give that a crack, and it was all on. It was a big job, and we got a lot of stories out of that. And then
you won that, right?
Yeah, did
straight
win it.
Straight out the bat.
Straight off the bat.
Yeah, that was good. I didn't know how it was going to go, or how to train or anything like that. But it wasn't like a stacked field. It was quite a new event and things like that. But yeah, it was Rufus and I against this Irish guy, Donica, who was just a machine, and he wasn't sleeping, and he was a savage. Like he had saddle sores, so he'd just do 24 hours without sitting on his seat. He had things going on with his feet, so he just cut the front of his shoe out. Like this guy was just a machine, and I just felt like I felt bad for beating him because this guy had gone through a lot worse. And,
yeah. Oh my god!
And we got to the end, and at the time, like the race organizer was there, and we were having a few beers, and he was like, "Would you ever do it again?" And we're like, "Shit, no, that was horrible," But then it sort of sinks in, and after a couple of months, we were like talking about it, and we had so many stories and so many highs and lows. We're like, that was actually pretty epic, And then, just found I'd randomly got the bug to do more of it. But you got to pick. You can't just do them back to back because you're just so mentally cooked after it. You can't bring yourself to, put yourself through that sort of. I don't know. It is a sort of suffering, I suppose. So some big gaps, and then get all stoked for riding your bike again, and then that's what I'm into at the moment.
Does it cook you, like you say?
It worked out well.
I was going to say, does it cook you when you get off the bike at the end of that, and you're just like, I don't want to ride a bike anymore?
Yeah, I didn't touch a bike after the tour for a month. I didn't want to.
Had enough of this.
But then you just mix it up, and then I've just got back on the bike slowly, and then did more gravity sort of stuff. I've been hearing Peebles and Lethen and riding my hardtail down those trails, which is completely different. And so you just mix it up. Still riding a bike, it's just a different genre.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's awesome. Speaking of Lethen, has there been any spottings of the big horse Cam Cole around there while you've been there?
Not yet, eh? I think he's on a holiday on Ireland, but
he's always on holiday.
So he's back soon though, and I'm here for another month, I reckon, at least. So hopefully there'll be at least a ride or a beer or two, eh? Be good.
Oh, nice. That'd be good.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well,
so that was your first event of this style, like, other than the Petite Brevet and stuff, was it? Or they, that was it. Like you just jumped in the deep end and went.
Yeah, that was carnage because we didn't really know how good we were or how to do it really. Like I just started watching YouTube and trying to figure out what they do, and then on day one, I still sort of thought I didn't know how competitive we were going to go. Like were we going to try and win it, or we just trying to do it? Like I thought it would be a cool thing to just ride through the UK, And then after a few hours, I saw that Rufus was like on a mission. Like we'd go past a cafe, and I was like, "You keen, bro? You keen for a coffee and a slice?" And he's just like, "Yeah, let's go." So we hadn't really discussed it. He had other ideas. I know. And we were just hammering it. And we did the first 200 Ks on day one. And then we both were just full on bonked, just like on the pavement, cooked. And we're like, we've just done 200 Ks. We've got 2,000 to go. And it was just, we felt like, as you would after 200 Ks, just cooked on the side of the road, just not knowing how we were going to get to Fort William, And we just, had to completely reassess. But just charged back up at the supermarket. And you just learn heaps about your body and stuff, Like you just sit down for 5 minutes and eat a pile of food, and then just start soft pedaling. You give it 40 minutes, you're firing up again, It's all about food, Just eating contests, these things. So we just learned heaps.
Did that one? Do you have any kind of like? Did you do any pre-prep in terms of like getting an idea of the course or like where you thought you'd be stopping or anything, or was it just a real flying by the seat of your pants, just like, oh well, I'm going to stop now because I'm tired, sort of thing? Or
yeah, it was pretty chill because I started looking into it, but yeah, as you say, I didn't really know how far I was able to go in a day. So we basically just got the maps, chucked it on our Garmin, and just went until we couldn't. But that's what was a really nice first one to do, because the UK is like such a civilized zone, and there was quite a few resupply zones and little villages and things that went through. It wasn't hectic like some of these races are in the middle of nowhere. So it was perfect to sort of wet the toes with that one. And yeah, after the first few days, we sort of worked out that we could do 200 to 250 k's a day in the terrain that it was. It was real mountain bikey, this one. It was like off-road most of the time, and it was just jank, like just really rough footpaths, and you'd go for 20 meters, and then you'd go through a gate, and then you jump over a fence, and you go through a paddock. So it was a real adventure. It really sapped the energy. But yeah, it was awesome, hey?
It'd be pretty mentally taxing just not being able to like sit comfortably pedaling when you're just constantly jumping off to do stuff like that.
Yep, that was it. And like the navigation was tough as well, just because there's turns all the time, and I was quite new to all that. I just had that.
Yeah.
You're just following a red line on your Garmin, and you know, you got the spot tracker, so people are watching you online and things. You're like, oh, it sort of goes through someone's backyard, and you don't know how precise you need to be or how precise the spot tracker's following you. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's just actually meant to go around this house, but I meant to go through it. And things you just learn over the years, you know, like the tracker only picks you up once every 5 minutes, so you can just sort of roughly follow the line, you know. But yeah,
okay.
heaps learned.
So then,
What about like bike setup? Were you like real green? Like, was your setup pretty light or like overstocked?
I had a real budget setup for that Great British Divide. I just bought I think it was called an On-One Whippet from some website in the UK. And it was a bargain, like £1,300 for like a cross-country hardtail with suspension. And I just slapped a saddle bag on it and a frame bag, and yeah, and then I just did some research and realised that you didn't need to like have to carry a sleeping bag and things like that. So I just bought the down pants and some down booties, and accompanied that with my like a down jacket, and then that was your sleeping sorted, and then just bought a mattress along, and yeah, it's all about trying to be lightweight, but it's just everyone's got a different comfort level, I suppose. You know, like some people need a good sleeping bag to have a good night's sleep. But at the end of the day, like if you're only trying to sleep 4 hours a night, you don't need it to be too comfortable, because I don't know, you'd probably just want to sleep more. I just did a test outside in the lawn, and after 4 hours I slept well, and then I woke up quivering and shaking because I was cold with my setup. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
So you just tested this at home?
That's dedication.
Yeah.
Was this in Christchurch?
No, I was staying at my girlfriend's in Scotland.
Oh man!
So it was specific testing, you know. I was just outside the door.
So if someone like peered over the fence, they'd see this guy huddled up and fall down.
Yeah, fall down. Just
that's so good.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh,
that's incredible.
And I just crawled in at like 4 a.m. I crawled back inside, and yeah, Katie was like, "Oh, is it no good? Like, why are you coming inside?" I went, "Nah, it's fine. It's just perfect. Job's done." Yeah.
Oh man! So then you've done the tour to Waipanamu here as well in New Zealand. Was that was after? Was it? I haven't actually. I've always wanted to do that. I thought you'd done it for some reason. I don't know why I've got that in my head.
But I've just got an entry to it for January.
Perfect.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah, frothing for that one.
Oh well. Look,
have you watched the documentary on it? Like the
Yeah. Yep, I did.
It looks awesome, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Bit of hiking and things. So yeah, Brian does a good job of putting that on. So looking forward to that in January.
Oh, awesome. So then you
KB's keen for that one as well.
Oh, fuck
yeah,
off.
I was going to say, if you boys were going to do an event, that one would be right up your street. hiking over Stag Saddle and descending down through
Well-
Craigie Burn and stuff, I think.
So good.
Well, we're all Santa Cruz teammates these days, so it'll make sense.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. Fantastic.
Hey, so you decided this year to do the Tour Divide. Was that just like, I mean, I from the little I know, that seems to be kind of like the almost pinnacle of this ultra endurance bikepacking niche. Was it pretty much like I'm just going in for the biggest thing now?
Yeah, it was exactly like that, I on like January the 1st, I heard from my sponsor, and they were like, yeah, we're moving, just basically cut me from the team, which was fine. They saw that, like, they sort of saw that I was having a lot of fun doing this ultra stuff, and I was moving away from it, and then I was discussing things, and then we had different opinions on the bike and where it should go and things like that. So it was more mutual than a dropping, but it sort of just it felt right when we sort of parted in January, and then like immediately after the phone call, I just went on bikepacking.com, and I just scoped through, and it was like, yeah, I was like a kid at Christmas. I was like, oh, what are we going to do? Where we're going to go? Had a bit of coin left over from last year, and I was just scrolling. I saw the Tour Divide. I'm like, I've seen YouTube videos on that. I've heard all about that. It must be the big one. I'll just if I'm gonna go for it, I'm gonna do that. And I mean, America's rad, and riding through that always sounded like a good idea to me. So, yeah, just fully committed to that job really after that, and just basically focused on it for maybe 4.5 months or so. So really a big change from what I'd previously put into these events.
So you'd got a bit more preparation in for this one, you'd say.
Massive amounts, hey. Like I learnt so much from everything, and I even put a couple of New Zealand events in the lead up just to try and learn more, because racing's the best way of learning, and then just everything sort of up to it led in really well.
It's
So what's
go ahead,
what's
Red.
the build up look like? Like you said you did some New Zealand events. Like, is it really just around conditioning yourself to just go for 18 hours at a crack sort of thing, or were you looking to work on your eating and all that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, those are the biggest things, man. In my opinion, it's just like there's no way to train. I feel like just going for 18 hours, going for 20 hours, like unless you're sort of doing some racing. So it's good to do a bit of that, obviously. But it's mainly just learning what you personally can take, and what do you need to run, how many carbs you need to use, how many fats you need to use, how much protein you're going to need if you're doing back-to-back days. A lot of food stuff, and then just gear is a big thing. And I was just looking into previous winners of the Tour Divide, and I'll be like, okay, what are these guys taking? And then some of these people at the top of the sport are just insane, and so they take just like one of those little tinfoil SOL bivvies, like emergency.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And then they rock up. And that's it. This guy Sofiane Saheli last year won the Tour Divide, and that was the only thing he bought for sleeping. And he does the first 4 days, like the first 1,000 kilometers, and he doesn't sleep, and then he'll have like a 15-minute sleep and things. So,
man, I don't know how
so I
you
did all
even
this
keep riding.
I know, it's insane. Doesn't really make too much sense. It's impressive. So I did all this research first in like January, February, and then I entered an event called the Great Southern Brevet in New Zealand, which was about 1,100 k's or so. And then
That's the one I got mixed up with.
Yeah, real similar, sort of pretty off road, and we go up like what do you call it, like Wanaka Snow Park and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Some pretty cool descents and things. So yeah, cracked into that, and then I basically used a version of what this guy won the Tour Divide with, and I was like, oh, if he can win the Tour Divide with it, I can do a 4-day race with it, surely. And then on night one, I was just frozen. Well, first of all, night one, I decided to try and ride all the way through the night to see if I could. And and
Could you?
Yeah. How'd that go?
Basically, long story short, no. I made it to 5 a.m. And it was like the sun was starting to come up. I'm like, come on, you've got this, but I was just like swaying across the road and things. And then I was at the bottom of the snowpark climb, and I was like, I'm not going to start this climb, which is like 1,800 meters or something crazy in this
Oh.
condition. So I used a little bivvy, but nothing else, no mattress or anything, and just crawled up in some frosty grass at the bottom of that access road. And then I woke up 40 minutes later, and I was just even in worse state, I was like, oh, man. And then another night on that trip, the next night I stayed, and I just had the bivvy, but I was using like a second pair of gloves to try and warm up my toes and everything like that. And I was like, I just can't do it with this lightweight setup. So, learning things, like obviously this guy can do it, I can't do it. So, and also a lack of sleep, like after that 40-minute sleep, I had a pretty good, decent day the next day, but I felt like I could have, done a lot better if I'd slept for a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, and then like pushed a fair bit harder, and ideally you'd make that time back. So, I was just basically testing out different ideas and different approaches that people have, the minimal sleep and crawling your way to the finish line, or just sleeping consistent sort of 3-4 hours and then riding a lot faster. And then that's what I landed on for now. For me, I just feel like I like sleep.
Yeah. Man, I don't do well if I don't get like 7.5 hours. So I don't know how I'd do it over 30 minutes. Man, I'd be a terrible person to be around.
That's
Luckily
nuts,
there's no one
eh?
around, eh?
Yeah. Do you ever come across, like, when you're in these, do you ever come across, you just see people like curled up on the side of the road or anything that are in the events as well?
Yeah, I have seen a bit of that. And I just try and keep quiet as I go past, just to let them have their time. And I don't want to wake up because it'd be in a battle, so you just like creep past.
Let them sleep.
Yeah.
It's like you said, you just couldn't warm up and stuff. I guess if you're not like, if you're that cooked and you're not getting any sleep as well, your body must just be like, rightio, mate, we can't actually keep you warm anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. You do rely on being that cooked, so that's why you bring a minimal sleep setup, I suppose, because no matter what, like on night one in the tour, I was like, you jump on your mattress and you're like, oh yeah, it's all right. I've had better sleeps. And then like by the end of the 14, 15 days, you're like dreaming of that mattress, and then you blow it up and it's like the best thing on earth. It's like the most comfortable thing ever. So you start just, comfort level changes a lot.
Yeah.
So you ended up third in the Tour Divide, which, I mean, from the outside looking in is pretty fucking incredible, and I'm sure it is when you're inside as well, especially first go at it. Did you have a goal or anything in mind going into it, or was it just let's see how it goes?
I didn't really have a goal, I think, because it's just such a big, gnarly event. I just realized there's so many sort of external factors that can make you pull out of this race, and the scratch or pull out rate is pretty, like, I think it's above 50% type thing.
Sure.
And when you crack into it, you know why. Sort of like, I can see why people don't finish this. So having goals is pretty tough. But obviously I wanted to finish. Well, I was a little bit more ambitious than that, to be honest. Like, people were asking what I wanted to do, and I said I'd definitely rather like scratch it halfway, trying to go fast, than just tour it and finish it in 30 days. So I sort of had that. I had that mindset going on. I just wanted to at least race really fast, just because that's what I'm into, eh? And some people were like, "Oh, you're missing out on the scenery and you're not getting the most out of it." But yeah, I'm the opposite. I think when you're racing it, it's just like wild. You're going through the middle of the night. You see all these animals, and it's way more. You just get fully involved, and you just feel like you're definitely a different, removed from society anyway.
Yeah.
You're just on this mission and sleeping a few hours, and then your head gets in a pretty weird spot. And you just carry on. You just try and go forward. So I knew I wanted to push pretty hard. And then I used my second event of training in New Zealand, which was just a sounds to sounds thing. Just a brevet, not a race, but I just wanted to do 300 kilometers a day.
Yeah.
Because I knew if I could do that in the tour, I'd do like a top 10 finish, like a good time. And then I pretty much, more or less ticked that off in the Sounds to Sounds. Rufus and I did the first day together, and we went from the top of the Queen Charlotte, sort of single track, whatever that is, and then all the way through the Molesworth to Hamner on day one, which is like,
it's a
Holy
big
shit.
hit.
yeah, it's like 315 Ks and
Jeez.
5,500 meters climbing. And then just carried on. Rufus pulled the pin in Christchurch, but I just carried on stacking 300k days on top of that. So after like 5 or 6 days of that, I was like, well, all I have to do is times that by 3, and then I can, do all right in the Tour de
No.
Night.
Yeah, only
Which at the
times
time
3.
is mind blowing because you're pretty wrecked at the end at Milford Sound and the Sounds to Sounds, and just the thought of doing even one more day is like, whoa, this is grim.
Jesus
But
Christ.
yeah, that's what I was doing. I was just trying to reassure myself that I can go at that 300k a day pace and get in the top 10 or get a good 14 or 15 day finish. And then I just lined up and went that speed and trained hard. I think I trained differently than what other people do. I just basically just trained like an XC racer. Pretty simple. I think I didn't really go out and do overnighters or do like massive days or anything like that. I just really consistently stacked up hours. So I was doing 20-hour week, then a 25-hour week, then a 30-hour week, and then have an off week, and then just kept on stacking it up and doing efforts as well, like FTP efforts, and then even VO2, like 5-minute maxes up Hackthorn Road and all that stuff. And yeah, just because I enjoy that sort of training as opposed to just slugging away or like going, I don't really want. I'm not too much of a bike packer. I'm not going to train for the Tour Divide by putting bags on my back and going out and doing, Lees Valley and Oxford Loops and anything like that. Like that's just boring. So I'd rather just get on a road bike or an XC bike and rip it. And then when I'm on a mission, and a race, then I'm stoked to be bike packing at that point.
I think I'm pretty sure I noticed that you had a power meter on your bike. Did you have one on there?
Yeah, I did.
So is that something
It's
that
pretty,
you were actually like
depressing
consciously? Is it like something you're consciously
numbers
using
aren't
though,
great.
or?
Yeah, I am every now and then. I purposely didn't have it on my screen because I didn't want to get carried away or I didn't want it to affect me. But I do find it really interesting. On the first day, like the lead group had some weapons in there, like Ted King, ex-Tour de France riders, and a few of the guys that ended up winning, and they were putting in some pretty good power. And I learned from the New Zealand races that you can't get caught up in that because it's such a long race. So
Yeah.
I just looked down and made sure I wasn't going over sort of 250 watts on the flat and 300 on the climbs. And then like if I'm there, I'm there. If I'm not, I'm not.
Yeah.
And then basically just stick to those. I tempo on the sort of zone on the climb, and then zone 2 or just above on the flat. But then after you're a couple of days in, like you'll be pedaling up a hill and you'll feel like a hero, and you'll look down, it'll be 200 watts, So obviously just all your legs just like get absolutely fried. So the same intensity just feels, it's just weak, which is pretty crazy. And then your heart rate as well. I had a heart rate monitor on, and like you'll push really hard, but your heart will only get to like 130, 140. Now, usually you can go up to 195 or something. So you're just sort of pretty shattered, like a bit of a wreck, You're just running on fumes.
Yeah. Do you reckon you'll do it again?
I don't know. Never say never, but there's plenty of other awesome events out there that I'd like to do and I want to do, like Tour de Waipounamu is in January, and then I've just done this Highland Trail 550 touring over 9 days, and they race that every year, and that's pretty iconic, and that's in May. So I'd like to come over and do that, and Katie lives here in Scotland. It's a good spot, so that makes sense. So there's some epic stuff going on in this sort of discipline. There's the Silk Road mountain race in Kyrgyzstan, and there's one through the Atlas Mountains in Morocco and things. And But I've definitely got the bug. Like I came third, and I just felt like I had a bit of a mare.
Yeah.
You can just see over the 14, 15 days like how much time you can knock off, and it hooks you in, and it's an amazing course. So yeah,
Does it
I feel like I'd like to.
does it stay the same each year, or does it vary like year to year?
No,
Like
they
the
try and
tour.
keep it the same.
Yeah.
But sometimes due to fire and like New Mexico
Yeah.
and things, they have to reroute it.
Yeah.
And also sometimes the snow on the passes is really, really bad. And they sort of get to a point where if they have to reroute to a certain level, the record, which Michael set in maybe 2015 or 2017, you just can't fight for that record anymore.
Yeah, that was
So
because
that's
that was
still
what I
going.
noticed on the dot watching was like his record dot, was like leading down the pack, and I was like, oh, I wonder how close it stays to the same thing for that exact point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's more or less the same, which is pretty cool. They do their best to keep it the same, but it's just so weather dependent, I
Yeah.
think. And he definitely had a good year. And then like these guys that won 1 and 2 were like way up on his dot for a while, and then they just got stuck in a portaloo for 9 hours in the middle of the Great Basin.
Oh, jeez. What a place to
and then they
be.
ended up. Yeah, I know.
Were they in the same one, or were
And
they in separate ones?
there was 3 of them actually in the same little portaloo, which was on a trailer, but there's just no shelter out there.
That
And
is
it was
a
just raining, and
tight confine.
you can't move through this mud. Yeah, 9 hours just all in there.
Jesus.
Where did
And,
the Portaloo come from?
It was just there. I don't know. They don't even know. They just said they just like were really struggling. They couldn't move, and it was like thunder, and they were like thinking, given 1 or 2 more hours, because those guys definitely bought nothing. Like just this emergency bivvies and things. So they were like, as long as we can keep moving, we can keep warm. But like they wouldn't have been able to keep moving for like another 10 hours because they're running off no sleep. And then they just found this portaloo on top of a trailer just parked in the middle of the Great Basin of Wyoming, and they're like, you beauty. So they just crawled and shivered in that for 9 hours.
Jeez.
And then the record rode away from them, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's beatable. It's definitely beatable and the right conditions and things, but it's just such, 4,500 Ks. It's a lot of territory to have decent conditions, and things just go wrong. It just takes one snowy pass. You can lose like 8 hours, so.
How far behind those guys were you at the finish in the end?
Quite a way, eh? They, about a day, like 24 hours exactly 24 hours behind the leader.
Yeah.
And then the guy that came second was sort of in between us. But he had some massive dramas, eh? Like his axis, like derailleur didn't change. He had to kick it to change gears, and then his Shimano pedal just like snapped off the axle as they do, and it slid off. So he'd have to keep sliding his pedal into the axle. So he lost time from the leader, and he was in the middle of us. And
oh man!
So yeah, they were definitely way up. It was a fight for third sort of thing. But yeah, in hindsight, there was a lot of mistakes and issues and just inexperience that I had in the first week, which sort of put me on the back foot. And then, so yeah, when you ask about whether I'd do it again, it's like it's tempting. It's definitely tempting just because I didn't nail it.
Yeah.
And also, it was also really cool to have guys like yourself, heaps of New Zealanders, heaps of it. It plucked up a whole pile of attention. Like halfway through, I was sort of getting a bit more on the internet and things. I was like, people are into this, I was just getting hundreds of messages on the Instagrams, just supporting, just like keep going, mate. So it was pretty damn cool.
We were definitely we were keeping watch. We had a few Where's Joe updates on the podcast, so it's cool to get you on here now to talk to you about it. That's for sure. I think, especially for us, all like racing downhill and that together, we're just looking at it like, holy shit, this is another level too. Being someone that we know, so it was pretty cool.
Awesome.
I've got I was like coming up. I was thinking up a few questions, and I actually ended up coming up with a little bit of a bests and worst segment. So I've got a few things, and I want to hear your best and worst from each of these. So, best and worst night's sleep over the course of the event.
Ooh. Definite worst was rocking into a place called Salida, and I was trying to get there really fast because my bottom bracket had blown up through the mud in the Great Basin, and they had a bike shop. So I was like just pushing, and the cranks were all over the place and things. So I'd ridden like 370 k's or something, and it was daylight when I'd come in. So I was like on 25 hours riding. And then so I just was not in the mood for a decent spot. So I just went straight to the river there and curled up. There was a river bank and then a walking track, and it was like 5 a.m. and I didn't really think like in a matter of hours there's just going to be dog walkers everywhere. And in between the walking track and the bank there was just this gutter, and so I just like basically just crashed out in this gutter. And it was
Like
just
a
like,
homeless
I was like full homeless, and I didn't even bother blowing up a mattress. I just got the bivvy out, put it over me, and full kit, helmet probably on, and I was just like sort of just curled up in this gutter. And then I just felt bad when I woke up because there's all these people walking past and stuff, and I was just letting the place down. And it was hot and sweaty as well, so definitely the worst. And then the best, like every third or so night, I got into a hotel. And basically, it was all of those times.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
just
nice.
insane. Yeah.
I didn't realize
just
you were
made
getting that
a
regular.
mission to do that. Yeah, it was definitely not in the second half, because I just wanted to keep going. But yeah, in the first half, I definitely did because I needed to keep everything charged. I had a dynamo on my front hub, which slowly charges your power banks. But when you can just plug your two dynamos straight into the wall, your Garmin, your phone, get everything charged up, and then you can clean your bib shorts because you only got one set. And
that must be a novelty, a luxury.
Yeah, and then you can dry out your sleeping gear, like my bivvy and my mattress. So every night they'll be condensated and gross. So when it's freezing at 1 a.m. and you're getting into that cold, wet stuff, it's gross. So yeah, every third night I'll be in a hotel, and that was always just absolutely incredible. And when the alarm goes off after 4 hours, you just do not want to get up, eh?
That would be brutal, having to get back out of that comfortable, warm bed.
Oh, I know, and you're paying top dollar for this one night, and then you're there for 4.5 hours total. It feels like it's terrible.
Do you have any standout best and worst days from like on the bike from it? Like, was there a day that was just absolutely dismal, or a day where you felt like a hero or anything? Or
I had a really good day on day 2 because I had a shocking day 1 where I screwed up and I didn't have a base map on my Garmin, so I just didn't really know where I was going. Amateur stuff. It was just following this red line. I got lost a few times.
Oh, yeah,
so I decided to
tricky.
stop and I decided to stop in Fernie and then try and like sort it out. But I needed a laptop basically to upload a map into my Garmin. So on day 2, I started day 2 roughly 26, way back, and then on day 2 I did close to a 400 kilometer day, and like heaps of climbing as well, and it was just a really good solid day. Definitely the best day on the bike, and we were going through like Canada, as you guys know, Canada's unreal, and then into the northern Montana, so probably the best scenery as well. That was an epic day. And then worst days for sure. I don't deal well with the heat. I've always known that in any like cross country race. Like I did a cross country race in Oamaru the start of this year, and I just crumbled and stuff. And then in New Mexico, one of the days was 40 degrees, and I was just trying to get it done. Yeah, and it had like 4,000 plus sort of meters climbing, and I was just dripping with sweat. And there's basically no water either, so I'm like really conserving the water I've got. And that was definitely the worst day, eh? I'd just like be crawling along up these really, really hot, dusty roads trying to get it done, eh? I was in a pretty bad headspace there, to be honest.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very fun. 40 degrees sounds horrific.
Yeah.
No. I guess the nature of the event too, like it pretty much gets hotter the further in you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. People said New Mexico wasn't too bad, but it was honestly the worst thing ever for me.
Oh man.
Probably changes depending on how well people handle the heat. Maybe smaller people are better, but I really struggled.
It's quite a bit of altitude in New Mexico as well, isn't there? So like
There is,
hot and high.
there's heaps. Like when I entered New Mexico, I was at like 3,800 meters.
Mm.
Actually, for like 2/3 of this race, you don't drop below 2,000.
Wow.
So all through,
Oh wow.
yeah, like Wyoming, it goes up, and then you just hold a minimum of 2,000 all the way through Colorado, and then like a good chunk of New Mexico, which is pretty brutal. And yeah, I was just trying to do my best to sleep as low as I could. So if I was up in the pass and really like couldn't ride my bike and swerving all over the place, I knew that 4 hours sleep at altitude was going to be a lot worse than 4 hours sleep, at less altitude. So
Yeah.
I'd just get down to try and drop down to 2,000 meters and sleep down there and things. So that was another sort of spanner in the works, the altitude as well. And then obviously coming from New Zealand,
Yeah.
and racing people who, maybe the Americans who live in Colorado and stuff. It's tough, but it didn't seem too bad.
What was the best and worst items that you carried with you? Like maybe something you took the whole time and was like, man, I didn't need this.
A worst item. Apart from my bike tubes, I would have used everything.
So you stayed fairly lean.
Yeah, I stayed fairly lean. Yeah, you only bring what you can. And shout out to Maxis, didn't need to change an inner tube. So then you look at your second inner tube. That's always the the dilemma. Do you bring two?
Yeah.
Like one in the tube. You definitely need one spare. But if you bring two, you're being pretty safe, But yeah, so there was 2 inner tubes at the bottom of my saddlebag that just didn't get touched. And you look at them like, oh, I just lugged you around. But
speaking of Maxis, what did you run Aspens?
I did,
Yeah.
and that was like hotly contended chat as well. Like,
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Like for some reason, just bikepackers wouldn't go near an Aspen. They're like, oh, it's an XC race tire. It's got too much, just like non-treaded zone where you could slash it. And so they run Icons, or they run like Recon Race, I think is another one.
Yeah.
Another fast tire. If they go Maxis or like the
Yeah.
Mezcal is pretty big in these days for the Vittoria. But yeah, I just like the pace, the pure pace of an Aspen. I was like, nah, this is me. And so this was one of the early calls I made in January. And then I was able to test that tire through the Great Southern Brevet and the Sounds of Sounds and didn't get one puncture at all. And I was like, that is enough evidence for me to line up at the Tour Divide.
Yeah.
And I did like a bike check before going to Canada, and the amount of messages I got, like, bro, take those tires off, man. Just like,
Really?
Yeah. They get into it. The amount of abuse I get, not really abuse, but people are just like,
throwing
bad
their
message. They're
opinion.
quite opinionated. Yeah. So, yeah.
I would have thought that'd be mean because they'd roll real good.
Yeah.
But I guess you're right. Like, I don't know.
But if
In my experience, if it's going to flat, it's going to flat.
Exactly.
Like,
I know.
no amount of tread's going to help you.
Exactly. And they roll so fast. Yeah, I was just like, that's a no-brainer for me. Yeah, as you say, if it's going to flat, you're probably just smashing something and you're going to flat it. And it's also all about rolling speed. And they brought out that new max speed one, but unfortunately they didn't have it in a 2.25, which is what I wanted to run. So, I just ran a standard 2.25 Aspen, and it was the dream. Front and rear, pumped them up once halfway because they'd lost a couple of PSI, but just no punctures and stuff. And there's some chundery stuff out there, eh? It is a basic course. Like, when I chose to do the Tour Divide, I was like, this really isn't drawing into my strong points because, I can ride down a hill, and I've basically just chosen to do a gravel race, But it was just, so I did have second thoughts on that. Like, I wasn't going to get a good advantage out of years of racing overseas from doing this, but it was just the biggest, and I was keen to ride through America, so I chose that one. But looking forward to the future, like Tour de Waipunamu and the HT550 and those mountain races, they're a lot more technical, so it falls a lot more into my sort of strong points, which is quite exciting.
So there was pretty well on road like gravel road sort of style stuff, the tour.
Yeah, basically, it was like they said it was 90% gravel road, 3% single track, and 7% asphalt.
Right.
That's how they break it down. So the single track was really nice, just every now and then, and 3% still adds up when it's 4,500 k. So it's quite nice. You get a fair chunk of it every now and then, but yeah, most of it is just like pretty mindless gravel road. Like you got to be motivated. If you're just over it, then it would really bear you down.
I noticed the top two guys were running drop bars, and you were still sticking with a standard flat bar, but with some aero bars, obviously, to get off your hands. Was that like a conscious thing, or was that is that just kind of like their preference, you think, with the drop bar? Or
Yeah, both of those guys have come from like a roadie background, I think, roadie-ish, so I think it's just whatever's comfortable. Me with a mountain bike background, as soon as I put my hands on a drop bar for like a long time, I get nerve damage coming through my palms a lot faster than the flat bars. But yeah, and I trim my flat bars down as narrow as they could go. They're at 700. And then as like any chance I get, I'm on the Euro bars just for the Euro gains and weight off the hands. And like by the end of it, I'm like climbing on them and I'm even descending on them. And I've got buttons. I got buttons to change gears on the end of them. So that's the other thing. And the New Zealand ones, just like the repetitive, just take your arm off the aero bar, change gear, and click. That was just doing my head in. So I got this SRAM set up. So I had buttons
with the blips
on my
on.
grips. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, and at the end of my aero bars, So I'm right at home in that aero setup and just clicking away.
That makes a lot of sense.
Was that a risk? Is the electronic stuff a bit of a risk? I always thought that you guys would all be cable actuated, and wouldn't be taking any risks on the chargeable stuff.
I know. It's a massive risk, man. And then the guy who was coming second, Justinus, from Norway, he had massive issues and it started not working and he had to like detour and go to a bike shop and buy a whole new derailleur and everything like that. And when it was raining in the first week, my charger was like playing up. So I'd have to I'd sit there on my aero bars holding my battery and charger and the cable in it to make sure it charged.
Oh my God.
While I was pedaling.
Oh no way! So were you charging it off the charger thing?
Yeah, I'd charge the power banks off the dynamo, and then I'd plug I'd plug my bank into my charger.
Man,
So it got pretty stressful, and then halfway through, I was like, "Oh, I can't handle that." One of my batteries out of 3 blew out. So I stopped at the bike shop, bought a new charger and another spare battery, just to peace of mind, and another cable, But then also the blip box started sort of playing out that the gears on my handlebars weren't working too well. It's that I had to click them 3, 4, 5 times to actually do something. But the ones on my aero bars were perfect. So that was just more time in the aero bars again. So it's risky, but like, man, when you're going for that long and that many hours, it's like it's a lot of hours. That when you can just lightly tap a button, it's just a game changer, eh? And even just changing gears with a cable for days, like for 5 days or, like 8 days in the Great British Divide, my thumb was all numb and my hand was really bad.
Really?
So, things just take your toll. And I managed to do this whole divide with very minimal hand nerve damage. And a lot of that will be because of the buttons,
Yeah. Did you, speaking of like injuries, did you come out of it with anything lingering? Like obviously your hands and that did pretty well out of it, but anything else on the body get affected?
Yeah, I was having weird things going on with my my quads. Like one of them blew out early on, in week 1, and like it was so bad I was like limping up hills, like hopping off my bike, and I couldn't pedal.
Oh jeez.
So these are things like that, which is why it's like tempting to try it again, because I lost a lot of time in certain areas early on, and that seemed to be like heavily linked with my hydration. I still haven't figured out what was going on there, but like I just started every single bottle like of my sort of 5 liter capacity. I'd just start filling it up with Gatorade instead of like half water, half Gatorade, and then like
Yeah.
my leg was way better. Just random things like that. And then I blew out my right one in the last 3 days, and I genuinely thought it was all over at that point. Like, it was really, really painful. Every pedal stroke I was wincing, and I was like, oh, I'm 3 days out. And then I managed to sort of carry on, and then after I finished, both of my legs were just shot. Like, I could hardly use them again. So I managed to sort of just get into a position or get into a mindset where I could just push through both of those legs, sort of semi-injuries or whatever, overuses, and get to the finish line. But they've recovered now after a month of not doing anything. And the other thing is my feet were really, really bad. And I had heaps of drama coming in. I was trying different shoes and basically just couldn't find a shoe wide enough. And then if I found a shoe wide enough, which is like, say, like a downhill shoe, like a Crank Brothers one that I wore, then it was too soft, and the repetitive cycling would just blow out the sole of my foot.
Oh, yeah.
So I just had to pick that. And then I ended up just running that a Crank Brothers shoe with flat pedals the whole way. So that was not ideal. Just pedaling 4,500 Ks with flat pedals. Didn't think it would come to that. But now I've finally found, since the other day, I finally listened to all the bike fitters, and I've got a Lake shoe that comes in like extra wide, and it's carbon, so you don't have that compression issue, and it's wide enough for my, Hobbit New Zealand feet. So hopefully that might be in the past. But other than that, like all the skin had like worn deep off my feet. My feet were really bad, and they were very, very swollen. And then I had to hop on the plane and fly to Scotland a couple of days after finishing, and that swelled them up more. And then they were
wouldn't have made it better.
Nah, they were bleeding out of all the cracks in them and stuff on the plane.
Oh, boy.
Man.
It was not good.
So you did the whole thing on flat pedals, man.
Yeah, I know, it was weird. But I ended up like heavily regretting the last 10 years of my enduro and downhill switching to clips, because I was like, flats are mint. Like the confidence I had on some of these gravel descents, and just laying a foot out. I was like, this is why I started riding. Like, this is fun. I should be doing this on the downhill bike. So I really enjoyed it.
It's a different story when you get to the single track and your feet are getting bounced
must
everywhere.
have been pretty damn dire to get to that point.
Yeah, they were very dire, and I was like, they were running really loose, and then I was thinking about, I had a razor blade with me on my bike, and I was very close to just like cutting them out, and then I was very close to just trying to find like a Walmart and just getting some Crocs and things, and it's really bad. I was doing a fair bit of pedaling. Whenever I was on asphalt, I'd take my foot out of the shoes and just pedal in bare feet. On top of the pedal, just like on top of the.
Oh my god!
The shoes just on the pedal, and then your barefoot's on the shoe. Yeah, so it's doing that. That was ultimate relief. Because obviously the downhill shoes don't breathe either, so they swell even more. And, oh mate, it was.
They don't dry either. Like they take ages to dry out.
No chance. I know. It was grim.
Oh man.
Oh man.
And were you just operating off one pair of socks the whole time?
I had one set to sleep in, because
sleeping socks.
Yeah, I had a sleeping set of socks, and I just rotate basically between those. So I was quite disciplined, like realized it was a long race. So every sort of 4 hours, even if it wasn't wet, like the sweat would clam up your feet. So I'd stop as quick as I could, swap socks, hang the others off my aero bars, and then just carry on. And then also with the hygiene, every night I'd like make sure to like wet wipe the downstairs, and then I had some cream to put on to try and keep saddle sores at bay and things, because like things like that just take you out of the race. So even though you're like on a mission and every second counts, and you're like semi running around these service stations, dedicating some time to swap socks and like clean yourself and try and stay as hygienic as possible is annoyingly important.
Yeah. Keep the fungus at bay.
Yeah, get rid of that,
Hey, so you came across a bear pretty early on. I remember seeing. How was that? That'd be a pretty wild experience.
It was. Yeah, being a Kiwi, it was a very wild experience. I came bombing around this left-hander, and it was just in the middle of the road in front of me, and jammed on the brakes, and I gave her a massive shock while I did the skid, and then so it just like sort of, and I was like, oh no, because she was on edge. I think I'm saying she because it was a grizzly, but it was like it wasn't a full sizer.
Yeah.
I'm imagining,
Hmm.
and it just stood there for ages, like unfazed, looking at me, and I sort of hopped off and then got the whistle out, and then just which clearly was not phased about this whistle, and just took its time to get off the road. But yeah, it definitely sort of got the heart rate up, and I was buzzing for a few hours after that, because you're sort of one of those things you do want but you don't want. You want to see a grizzly in the wild, but then you realize that they're dangerous. But yeah, to get away with it was pretty cool, and just all the nature was absolutely insane. Like just so many animals all over the place, and then it's also another cool thing about at nighttime that it seems to just elevate the amount of wildlife.
Yeah.
And you're just out there, you just feel they're looking at you like, what are you doing out here? That's what's going on. And yeah, it's next level. And the first like 2 or 3 days and nights, I was sort of like conscious, I suppose, of the wildlife, because I coming in being a Kiwi, I was like, oh, I need to think about moose, I need to think about snakes, I need to think about scorpions, blah blah blah. But then when you get into that state where you're just like on a mission, moving forward and pretty cooked, you're like happy to see anything, like, oh, if I came around a corner and saw something, that'd be great, because it would be something to keep the mind busy. And yeah, you're really unfazed to a point. I definitely did my best to find a toilet to sleep in the first 6 nights when there was grizzlies around, just to be safe. And those pit toilets are cushy, They're like way bigger than the New Zealand ones, and they're like definitely 1 or 2 degrees warmer than the outdoors, which yeah, it was really cold. So
Oh man, the whole thing just sounds loose. I'm sure we could probably sit here for like another 4 hours and talk through like all the shit you came across and happened to you on it. I'm pretty much out of questions. Have you got anything else on your mind, Red Dog?
I got a couple. I think one of the most intriguing things, or the thing that I guess as a guy who's like tragically into bikes, right? I always find the setups really, really interesting, especially for this sort of event. Is there anything you'd change, or are you pretty happy with that divide setup?
yeah, I've been mulling that over, Like, for some reason, my bike I spent a bit of time with the guy that came second and was potentially fastest on the divide. Like, he just had some, as I say, massive mechanical issues, which lost it for him. And his bike was so light, like obviously he skimped with the sleeping setup, which I need to like try and work on and obviously try and get confidence with, to try and save a lot of weight there. But like weight is a massive thing. And I don't know, his bike was so light. He basically running a Trek gravel bike frame, as you say, with drop bars, and then they just put 100mm rock shocks on it. So it's like just like a fast setup, just whack a set of suspension on a fast gravel bike with really light carbon rims and things. My bike was like a real mountain bike. It was like I've just taken the bags off it and I'm ripping it down hills now,
Yeah.
which is very different setup to what they're running, I suppose. So yeah, I'm definitely still playing around with ideas for the future of these sort of events. And then also they just limit themselves to like 2 or 3 bottles max, and then just like deal with the repercussions of finding water or not finding water. And then
That's
I was really freaked out. It is risky. It is risky, but all through New Mexico and things, I was carrying 6.5 liters, that's 6.5 kgs. And I'm just chugging up these hills. You notice the difference so much more. So, like just doing the course one time would mean that I would just be able to carry a lot less water and a lot less supplies, because I was worried about that. But the bikes themselves, yeah, I'd still run. I actually, I learnt the hard way with this mud that everyone goes on about, the peanut butter, when it clogged up. I thought 2.25 aspens would be narrow enough, but everyone around me was running about a 2.1 and just having a way better time.
Right.
So I'd go narrower on the tyres again. So I'd have to find probably, they don't make an aspen that narrow. But other than that, I was pretty happy, eh? Yeah.
What was your
That's cool.
What was your favorite your like go-to meal of choice? If you could actually stop somewhere, because man, you said you were eating your way through America, so there must have been some good choices.
I know, that was the cool thing about flying over from New Zealand. It's all new to me, these it was just fresh. You walked into a service station, and of course the locals would be in there like, oh, service station food. I was just like in a smorgasbord, eh? I was like, oh, look at these. You got these donuts, and you got those hot dogs, and they're hot and they're ready to
Oh
go.
yeah.
And I was and it's just a all you can eat card as well, no regrets type thing. So
you're just like calories. Give me calories.
Yeah, monster calories. So smashing the hot dogs. I just line them up on the counter there, and just do about 6 with a heavy serving of mustard and tomato sauce, and then just like nail 3, and then put another 3 in the bike. Heaps of cinnamon rolls.
Oh, good.
They do high calorie food really well in America, right?
Yeah.
It was a great time. Might even hammer a monster out on the pavement before I'd set off again. Heaps of Red Bull, just like little 250ml Red Bulls. I'd just have those, just little shotguns as I was going up a climb or something. So,
Oh man,
mate, the food was fantastic, eh?
Yeah.
And then I'd go out of my way to find a burger. Heaps of Maccas. Whenever you saw a Maccas, I'd done all the research before on the route and figured out where the Macca's stops were, because it's fast, you know what you're getting, and then they keep really well in like a bib short pocket, those burgers, and you can just get massive refills. And I was taking the piss, so I'd just go straight in there with like my bladder, 3-litre bladder, straight up to the refill and just fill it up with Powerade. And then so I'd get 6.5 litres for my one refill drink of Powerade, just loaded up on the bike. And you just look like such a state, and nobody wants to tell you not to, So,
so yeah,
they don't care.
Look at the state of it.
They don't
obviously
care.
Needs it.
Yeah, give it to them. So, yeah, no, the food was fantastic, eh?
Oh, that's good.
And that's what it comes down to, like obviously it's just like you can just only go pedal as far as you've got fuel for. And thankfully I'm just like a pig when it comes to food, and I can just keep going, and I can sit down at Macca's and eat like a 2,000 or 3,000 calorie job, and then like get on my bike and carry on pedaling. And I'd be training to do that as well. Like I'd pedal out full speed to Kaiapoi, sit down at Macca's, eat $25 worth, and then pedal out to Oxford. And people would just think, "What are you doing?" I'm just like, "No, I'm training for the Tour Divide."
That's the best training solution I've heard.
I know. I was genuinely like, "This is what I'm going to have to do." I'm going to have to hold over 200 watts with a full gut. So
I'm going to start telling people when I'm at Macca's I'm training.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm training. Joe said so.
Training.
Yeah.
Did you have any gut problems? Like, did it ever backfire on you, or have anything that didn't sit right?
That's a massive thing in this sport, basically. But I, more or less, pretty good, eh? Like, yeah, I was pretty lucky. The big thing is you ride through a lot of cow and sheep shit, so I had like fenders covering my bottle, sort of nozzles to make sure I didn't ingest any of that. A lot of people end up with diarrhea and stuff through that way.
Oh boy.
A lot of people just can't eat and stop eating. I definitely had some really bad points where I couldn't eat anything. But yeah, then I just sort of go to liquids for a few hours and just have Red Bull and Coke. I always have like a bit of Red Bull and Coke on me for those times when I can't eat. And then sometimes I'm just crying out for like a real feed, so I'll just find a burger at a restaurant or something, and the top guys don't even like they would not have sat down to eat the whole way, the whole way for 2 weeks, which is pretty impressive. But
wow,
I would do that once a day or maybe once every 2 days. Like I'd find a spot, sit down for like 30 minutes, whatever it takes to cook, and just nail a couple of thousand calories, and then after that for like 4 hours I just feel amazing, because it's just such a good hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's sort of how I avoided stomach issues, really. Just try and get a little bit of real food in as well as just sugary crap, and some people can just do the whole thing. Like one guy won in 2018 and he just had Cliff Bars the whole time, basically.
Oh, man.
Oh my god.
It's impressive, just to be that disciplined to just eat Cliff
Yeah, I
Bars.
can hardly eat them for an enduro race, eh? Like I'm sick of
I
it.
know. Yeah.
3 a day. That's about as much as you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can train yourself to just sort of be not picky and just keep running off something, then you're good to go.
Oh, yeah. Calories in, calories out.
What? My last question, Joe. When you touch the fence at the end, what does it feel like? Like, is it a relief? Is it kind of like one of those times where you kind of can't? You're so knackered you can't actually comprehend what you've done, or like, what's the feeling there?
Yeah, it was good. It was good because I'd sort of knew I'd done it for like at least 40 kilometers, because the end of the last 200 k's of that race is basically more or less flat. But then there's still gravel and things. There's still things that could go wrong, and you could have a catastrophe, like a bad mechanical or something. But the last 25 k's is just a straight line on the road, real grim. So I had quite a while to sort of digest that I'd nailed it, that I'd done it, and so that was it was sort of like a slow burner. And but then when I finally hopped off the bike, yeah, it just felt weird. It just felt like, because you'd just been riding. It was more of the feeling of like being off the bike, and I sat down on the stones sort of beside the fence, and then like the clock stopped, in your head, because everything for 2 weeks before that is on the timer. Even like if you're not pedaling, you've either got to be buying food or sleeping. Ideally, if you're eating food, you're moving as well. So I just sat beside the fence, and then you're just like, oh, I'm not on the clock anymore. It stopped. So it was like a surreal moment where you can just sit without being guilty, without feeling guilty. Like I should be doing something else. I should be sleeping or pedaling. But yeah, obviously just a massive sense of achievement as well. It was really, really hard.
Yeah.
Like I knew it was going to be hard, but it was really hard. Like I had ambition at the start, as I sort of spoke about, but then after about 3 or 4 days, it all sort of flew out the window, and I was like, I will just be stoked to finish this event. This is crazy. So, the ambition just flew out the window. Obviously, I carried on pushing really, really hard, but yeah, it's just really tough to finish. So, yeah, you're just stoked, basically.
Yeah.
Was anyone else there?
Thankfully, there was this legend who had pulled out due to some sort of altitude sickness or something, quite a bad condition with his lungs. And he was from Alaska, and he was called Myron. And he drove down to the end just to help out people as they were finishing, because otherwise it's just no one.
It'd be a
And
bit
so he was a
deflating.
legend. He was there. I know. It's weird like that, and it's one of the biggest races. But I think that's why it's one of the biggest races, because it's weird. You just sort of race, and then you finish at this weird gate, this fence, and then just nobody's there. So it's got this niche sort of weirdness about it. But he was there, and he had he got me out of my shoes and put a set of sandals on. I was like, oh, no way. And then had a watermelon there, just like figured out what you'd want when you're finishing in crazy heats in New Mexico. And obviously something that you'd never eat because there's no calories in a watermelon.
Yeah.
But so he was a legend. He picked me up, and then it was a couple of pretty interesting days, to be honest. Went to a little town closest to the border called Hachita, and yeah, it was quite a weird vibe. It was quite a different zone down there, right by the border, and then flew out to Scotland to sort of get some real recovery in.
Was there the other, because I saw there was a podium photo. Was that where the first couple of guys were? Is that where you ended up taking that, or?
Yeah, so there's this little place called the Hachita Bike Ranch, and a guy just sort of picks up people from the border, drives you an hour and a half or so back to his place, and then you're welcome to stay there for a night, and then he sort of sends you on your way.
Yeah.
And so the first and second were still there, and I just Yeah, well, I went back there and then took that photo. Like, so that would have been just like an hour or so after I finished. They'd already obviously showered and slept for a few hours and things. And then everyone just, you can stay there for a day or two. But there's not much there, eh? There's this one little food mart which has got like, a freezer full of frozen burritos, and that's about it. So if you want to get a proper recovery meal in and like a really good sleep that isn't just in a desert, you've really got to make your way north at some point, eh?
Get out of there. Oh man, what a wild way to end like such a massive few weeks, and then just going to that like basically to nothing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird end, that's for sure, eh? But it's special. It's pretty cool to look back on.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a very, very impressive achievement to finish it, let alone be in the top 3. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm stoked, eh? It's been good. It's been good so far, and it's plucked up a bit of attention and things. So it's exciting.
No, that's good. That's awesome. That's probably a good way to finish our podcast. I mean, we'll just fade away into obscurity like you've reached the fence at the end of the Tour Divide. But no, it's awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Joe. It's been bloody good to catch up on that. And no doubt we'll see you back here in the country and at some sort of bike race before long. Yeah,
definitely. Thanks heaps for having me on, guys. Even though it's not your standard sort of genre to discuss, it's good that you guys are keen enough to get it out there, and glad it's interesting.
Oh no, we had plenty of questions, and I think we've got plenty of our listeners would be keen to hear the story too. So I'm sure it'll go well. That's awesome. Thanks again, mate, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Joe.
What's up?
I come from the land of down under. I can't hear you. What was that? I can't hear you. I let it be like John Lennon, the anti-serum that you don't get for poisonous venom. Read the label carefully, I'm only here for the show. I love hip-hop too much to let you feed my ego. In the key of F-U-C-K, Y-O-U. I mean, why do I owe you if you're not helping me through? I mean, why do I owe you if you're obstructing my view? Success is not my castle, just a house that's brand new. You see, I irrigate the culture, give it shape like a sculpture. Still complicated, rock like I'm supposed to. B-L-I-T-Z like my DJ. Rock to the rhythm like you rock to what he plays.